This week, the Supreme Court heard arguments about President Trump's efforts to restrict birthright citizenship. That case centers on a major part of the president's immigration agenda, an order he signed on day one of his term. However, lower courts across the country blocked it from ever taking effect. That order said that children born to parents in the U.S. illegally or here temporarily are not American citizens. Here is some of what the White House argued in court.
Unrestricted birthright citizenship contradicts the practice of the overwhelming majority of modern nations. It demeans the priceless and profound gift of American citizenship. It operates as a powerful pull factor for illegal immigration and rewards illegal aliens who not only violate the immigration laws, but also jump in front of those who follow the rules.
Now, those who did listen to Wednesday's arguments say the justices did seem skeptical of the Trump administration's claims. The court is not expected to release its ruling until early this summer. But in the meantime, we want to get reaction about what happened in court with Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. She is an immigration attorney working here in Austin. Kate, welcome to our show, and thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So we understand you paid some pretty close attention to the oral arguments on Wednesday. Did any moments give you a sense about what would happen when the judges ultimately issue their ruling?
You know, there were lots of individual moments, but I would say generally, overall, the outcome seems that even the conservative justices were really skeptical about what it would mean practically to cancel birthright citizenship or whether the domicile argument really matters. I mean, we have the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, the Supreme Court precedent in the Wong Kim Ark case, and Congress has already passed a law applying the 14th Amendment. So it's just very long-standing practice in the United States that someone born here is a citizen. And you know, frankly, I think that it's going to go against the president, meaning birthright citizenship will remain at the end of the day.
Does that perhaps surprise you about what you heard from the court?
No, I wasn't surprised. I was relieved. I was surprised that they granted cert to even hear oral arguments because it seems like such a settled area of the law. And so it was concerning that the oral arguments even occurred. But watching the way that the oral argument went down and the way that the conservative justices were acting with skepticism, I felt confident at the end of the oral arguments.
Okay, and again, as we mentioned, we'll wait until early this summer to see what the ultimate ruling is. But even though the executive order that President Trump signed has never taken effect due to those lower courts' actions, how is it still affecting your clients, if at all? Is it something that is worrisome to them or concerning in any way?
Absolutely. My clients of all levels are really worried about what the birthright citizenship going away will mean, what will happen to their green cards. I mean, people of every level are really worried. And this is just such a fundamental principle of what it means to be American. This is how you are American. You are born in this country. And so when that sort of bedrock is shaken by our president, it really makes everyone feel anxious and worried about themselves and their families. And I have to soothe people's anxieties every day, even if they are born in the United States. And that's a shame.
How do you handle that exactly, to be able to continually do that for people?
It's an honor for me to be able to do that. I appreciate that I have information that can help people. And so I look forward to these conversations, and I share as many updates with people as I can and realities. And there are some times that we need to worry and prepare, and I will be honest with people and tell them that. But I've been pretty confident all along that birthright citizenship is here to stay.
And before we wrap up our conversation, I want to mention something that the president talked about. He went in person to listen to the oral arguments, at least in part of it yesterday. Here's what he said about his order to rescind birthright citizenship.
If you look at the original birthright citizenship papers, they all happened right after the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves. And hopefully it's going to say, because our country is being scammed. We're getting all of these people, they're selling the rights to them. People are making a big living, getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars from bringing people in and saying, congratulations, your whole family is going to be a citizen of the United States of America.
Well, now on the other side of that soundbite, Kate, I'm hoping you can share your reaction to what he is saying there.
Well, first of all, it's a lie. That's not the way that it functions. But the 14th Amendment came to this country because we wanted to clarify that children of slaves were full citizens. Because we were so absolutely racist and had enslaved people, the 14th Amendment became necessary. And what I hear here is the president trying to return to the racism of the time of slavery by saying that children born in this country of certain people do not deserve U.S. citizenship, therefore creating a subclass of people who live here and who are born here. That's unacceptable to most of the people in this country, and I really hope that the Supreme Court justices make the right decision, and I think that they will.
Of course, we'll keep following this, but Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, we appreciate you again coming on and talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.